everyone. How you doing today? I'm happy to be back today, Mike and Russ. Thanks so much for yesterday, for hanging out. I was literally sitting in this chair when the school nurse called me that my daughter was like throwing up all over the place. I'd jump out of the door, pick her up, and then realized when I got there she was like dehydrated. I had to take her to the hospital. She had to get IVs. It was just a fun afternoon in general. So you guys really picked up the ball. I appreciate it. So we're back, everybody. I'm the only one who has not gotten this illness. I want to throw that out there. This, healthy me. I'm just
okay. So what that means is I'll prepare for solo shows for the next week.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, don't put it to the rest of us, okay?
Yeah, don't tempt fate.
Might want to have a backup plan there, Mike. Yeah, no, we'll see. But geez, so much to discuss today. Let's get going on this.
I got breaking news if you want that.
Okay, Russ, let's do it. Let's first start the show.
Fresh breaking news. All right, so Ivan Provorov has been named to the World Championship roster.
Oh, wait.
Sorry.
Let me start the show here. Let me start the show. Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, May 2nd, 2017.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Jan Levine.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and going, and is brought to you by readers like you at patreon.com/hockey. And Russ, you have a announcement or some breaking news. And so
I do have some breaking news. So Ivan Provorov was selected for the World Championships for Team Russia, and Victor Antipin was selected for World Championships for Team Russia. So that's going to slow up Antipin getting to the NHL. They're now saying in Russia he is coming to the NHL. They won't say where. We're all assuming Buffalo, but they're not going to say. They're not talking.
Wow. Okay. So good for Provorov, though. That's going to be a good experience for him.
It'd be really good for Provorov, and this could be really great for Buffalo because Antipin could really help their blue line.
Yeah, and this is just following the number of KHL defections that we're going to see over the next couple months. I mean, I think we talked about Kovalchuk yesterday, but there Shipachev and a few other Bereglazov, the defenseman who signed with the Rangers. There are a number of players, but the funny thing is, Russ, there's a number of players who are coming over, and there's a number of players who might be going back. I saw something yesterday about Nail Yakupov possibly going into the KHL.
Sure, but the KHL is a mess. That's what I've been told over there, and we've been talking about how, and I definitely have been talking about the last couple of years that I think it's been deteriorating, and I think now you're seeing that. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I don't know if Yakupov going to the KHL is a real big loss for the NHL right now because he hasn't done a whole heck of a lot here. So he probably needs to go there, resurrect his career, and maybe get a second, third, fourth chance here, whichever number he's at now.
Yeah. No, he's such an enigma to me. I mean, I never really would have guessed that Yakupov would have gone, would have not had success. I really think that he seemed like such a solid choice to be a huge success. And
well, I think the problem is now, Eck, is that after the Edmonton situation, really in St. Louis, he was used mostly as a third, fourth liner, and he doesn't have a third and fourth line skill set. He's got a top six forward skill set. And if you're going to use him in a third line, then you may as well not use him at all. Let him go, maybe he goes to Russia, maybe he plays big minutes, maybe he can resurrect his offensive abilities, and then in a couple years, maybe he comes back. But I think Edmonton did a disservice, and I don't think the St. Louis experience really helped him out either.
I think he could end up in Vegas. I'll throw that out there. I think that could be a good. I mean, he's not going to be protected probably, and I think that's a great option for if you're Vegas. That gives you a little bit of skill up front, where he could be a top six player, and maybe we'll see what he can do. I can
see it happening. I mean, they'll grant him all the time that he probably needs if the expectation is they're not going to be good right away. I mean, it kind of depends on what else they do in the expansion draft and how well they do in the regular draft and how long they think their timeline is to become good. But that kind of move makes sense if they can give him 18, 20 minutes a game and kind of see what he's got.
Yep.
Also, I don't know if you guys did see the Canucks defenseman signed former Canucks defenseman signed a 3-year deal.
Tremaine. Yeah. I don't think the Canucks were very happy about that. He came over for 1 year, and I think he started to play well at the end of the year, but yeah. He's a big. That was a big body, and that Canucks defense is not an area where they're really strong.
No,
that's for sure.
The better players are coming this way. I think that's the key.
Yeah, no, I think that's usually the key, and right now I think.
But it did slow down, Eck. It did slow down for a while. Now it's like gangbusters.
Yeah, no, and I think that's I think.
And if it wasn't an Olympic year, I think it would be even more.
Yeah, you're probably right. and it's definitely true, especially with the NHLers not going. Those guys are going over there to compete now for jobs in the Olympic team, because the Olympic team gives them exposure, maybe gets them back in the NHL. So there's a whole bunch of things. I mean, at the end of the day, it's probably more about getting back to the NHL in some cases for those guys, because they really want to sign good contracts over here.
And staying alive on the bad plane flights and everything. Unfortunately, they still have that to deal with.
Right, and it's a scary place to play. I mean, I've talked to people who played there, and I know people that still haven't gotten paid from years ago there. So it's like it's a hard place to play, and they obviously don't like when we post YouTube videos, because we've gotten with them a couple times. KHL. So anyway, so let's talk about this for a second. Last night, the big news, of course, and probably the big news of the playoffs maybe so far, is Crosby getting knocked down by Niskanen. And it's a big, I know not everybody's a Crosby fan, but this was an interesting development for me. I mean, I watched the play over and over and over again, as we all did, and I can go back and forth on it. And like I said, I really still feel it's similar to, I still feel like the hit on Fiala still reminds me of the same kind of situation. Like, to me, this is another reactionary play. There's no suspension going to Niskanen. That's already been determined. But I thought the 5 minutes, misconduct was kind of strange. And yet at the same time, I mean, what are your thoughts? Mike, start with you on this one.
Well, I mean, I didn't think the Bertuzzo-Fiala incident was purposeful, in the sense that I don't think Bertuzzo pushed him to injure him. I think he was taking him out of the play. And in this instance, I actually think that the swing from Ovechkin, Ovechkin doing his best Mark McGuire imitation, had an effect on this play, because after he hit Crosby and Crosby went across the crease to attempt to score, he started to fall. And that's when Niskanen was coming with the cross-check, and I think the intention was to hit him on the shoulder, and Crosby's falling down, and he hits him in the head area. I think the 5-minute major in the game misconduct was enough of a penalty for Niskanen. Mm-hmm. And I think that it wasn't, quote, a predatory hit. And I think Barry Trotz getting a little bit upset after the game regarding, whether it was predatory. You're talking about a half a second. You're talking about a very quick situation where we see it on the replay and we see it in frame by frame. And in that instance, it looks like, oh my God, he went and tried to take him out. I don't think that was the case.
Barry Trotz included, nobody talked about the Ovechkin stick infraction, which is right there. Everybody sees it. We're not blind, and nothing gets called. And that's really what set up Crosby to be in a vulnerable position.
Right, and that's my overall problem, Russ, because you cannot convince me of this. And the funny thing was, yesterday on the webcast, I questioned Ovechkin's intent regarding the shot to Ron Hainsey's head in Game 2, and said, if he wanted to really affect this series, he should have shot at Sidney Crosby. And I was being tongue in cheek, but in a sense, Alex Ovechkin is a star player, but Alex Ovechkin is a predator. That's what he does. And he gets away with it because he's a star. And it drives me crazy. And he didn't even get a 2-minute slashing penalty for that situation.
Well, Jan, go ahead, and then I'll bring up the Rob Rossi article that sort of agrees with you guys a little bit. But
yeah, you should also bring up the Dave Lozo thing he posted today also, which is completely ridiculous. So it's the other one he's tweeted out as well, on the quote unquote what he heard that the audio after Game 2 in the locker room was. It was kind of ridiculous. Considering the source. It's considering the source, but it's in line of putting things out there that really create a bad situation. But in terms of, I agree with you. First of all, the Ovechkin hit definitely should have been penalized. It's a two-handed slash across the chest that should have been penalized. Because of the virtue of that, it knocked him off balance, which had his leg partially collapsing underneath him and put him in the position where he was going to get hit in the head. Ryan Wilson wrote a really good blog on it with a lot of quotes. If you read Niskanen's quote afterwards, there was intent to cross-check, because I think he felt he was going to hit him on the shoulder or on the side or in the back. There was not intent to hit him in the head. However, by virtue of him hitting him in the head, the 5-minute penalty and the misconduct was clearly warranted. Now, whether or not you want to argue that a headshot automatically should have some form of a hearing, that's another matter altogether, and the NHL should probably start taking that under consideration. But Ray Ferraro had a couple of good tweets where if they actually called the penalties that are in the book the way they're written in the book and get away from the garbage that we've seen over the past several years, you'd clean up a lot of this stuff. And I know a lot of guys on my blog, they're talking karma's a bitch because Crosby has done stuff in the past, the slash to Mathat's hand, the slew foot, the other things that he does in the past, him being a crybaby. I'm of the viewpoint is never root for anybody to be injured, especially superstars, because they're the guys that carry the league, but it goes both ways. Ovechkin should have been called on the penalty. Nothing got called. Nothing got talked about until a couple people brought it up afterwards. And that's the bigger problem here, is that Ovechkin has gotten away with murder for way too long. His checks where he leaves his feet, makes head contact, never gets called. This is a situation where his cross-check precipitated the Niskanen hit. I think the NHL handled it right that there shouldn't have been discipline, but the Ovechkin thing is still a problem that has to get resolved and resolved quickly.
And Niskanen's a clean player. That's the funny thing about it.
I don't know about that.
He's a pretty clean player. He is.
I don't know. He's not. I wouldn't call him a dirty player, but he's a sneakily dirty player.
Okay, but I mean, he's really on the scale. He really doesn't.
He's raised on the scale in terms of dirty players in the league.
If Niskanen is a sneaky dirty player, then Alex Ovechkin is an overt.
Oh yeah, I know. So let me go to Rob Rossi's article, because Rob Rossi, who I guess he writes for.
He writes for the Pittsburgh Tribune Review, and he's the
Pittsburgh Tribune Review. He does, right?
I think he's still a columnist for them. Yes.
All right, because I got this from Upgroove. I'm not sure. So anyway, what is Upgroove? Is one of those sites.
You got me.
I think it's I think it's a. Whatever. I don't know where this article is from, but it's Rossi. So let's just say he's a columnist, no matter how you slice it. Okay, so he starts his line by Alex Ovechkin shouldn't play another game in these Stanley Cup playoffs. Okay, and then he gets now Rossi's not exactly one for
impartiality
or subtlety, but he gets but I've always liked him because he does speak his mind, and
he does.
And he does say things that a lot of people won't say. Okay, so he gets into Niskanen and he says Niskanen had issues, and has been dirty against it. He said, he's in previously. He said, against the Dallas Stars, when he was.
Did you ever write that James Neal was dirty? I kind of wonder. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, really. But here's Ovechkin was the reason Crosby the NHL should and could throw the book at Ovechkin, who skated freely despite playing a big role in Crosby's injury. Ovechkin was the reason Crosby only lasted 3 shifts in Game 3. He was the capital most responsible for Crosby's injury, which is what you guys are saying too.
That's true.
He carelessly lifted his stick into Crosby's head, forcing the NHL's sturdiest skater to stagger into Niskanen. If Ovechkin hadn't gone that route, Crosby wouldn't have gone head first into a check.
Hold on 1 second. Just breaking news from Mike Sullivan, the Penguins coach. Sidney Crosby has a concussion and will not play in Game 4. Connor Sheary has a concussion as well, and I'm just checking to see whether he will play or not. But I would assume if he has a concussion, he's not playing in Game 4 as well. So
okay, we're looking with Crosby. It's probably. There's a good chance he's not going to be back for the playoffs. Yeah, so, which I think was the obvious.
And the news that he's out is the breaking news. I think they had announced a little while ago that he had a concussion, but wasn't clear that he was going to be out. The same with Sheary now also on that hit between his own man actually put Sheary out with a concussion as well. Right.
So he goes on to say, makes you wonder what the closed door meeting called by the Capitals players was really about after their blowout defeat in Game 2. And he's basically saying, that they have nothing. The Capitals have nothing to gain here except to try to knock Crosby out. That they've all been under pressure for a long time to win, and they can't win. And they almost went down 3-0 last night, which would have changed things a lot. I think that was a big goal for them, for sure, to win that game last night. But I don't know. I think it's it's a tough call. I get Ovechkin. Ovechkin should have been penalty. I don't think Ovechkin's out to kill Crosby, though. I don't
think he's out to kill him. But this is the only thing that could have put the Capitals on even footing with the Penguins is not having Sidney Crosby in the series. They now have that. Letang aside, Crosby was killing them, absolutely destroying them.
Yeah, no, he was. And
Ovechkin was probably frustrated, but the problem is, just like anybody else who gets frustrated in this league, he should be penalized, and he's never penalized.
And that's the problem is, and there's enough history, as I've said, on his checks where he leaves the ice with both feet off the ice and makes contact or slams guys into the boards, that nothing is ever called. And granted, look, as a superstar, you get away with certain things. I get it. That's why Crosby has maybe gotten away with some of the stuff that should have been called. But if you're going to send a message, then you send a message and actually you target the superstars, and everybody else will actually get the message and cut down this crap. If not, all you do is perpetuate the same problem over and over again.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I mean, the game last night was compelling, but it was also a really ugly spectacle because after Crosby, it got really, and that chippy is not the word. I mean, we're talking cross checks, we're talking running from behind. You know, I know that there was an incident with Malkin and Tom Wilson, and I think it was in the second period that got a little bit ugly. This series is now going to, I think, decompensate.
It's going to take a deep dive into that area, Mike. It is.
Right. And the thing is now you're going to see them focus in Washington. This is going to be a war of attrition. They're going to focus all their guns on Malkin and on Kessel on their two.
Here's the $1 million question: are we going to see Tom Sestito now? Is this what's going to happen?
Yes, you are. I would be shocked if we didn't see Sestito given what transpired yesterday, especially if Crosby wasn't out and Sheary wasn't out. I would say maybe we wouldn't. But you know what? This is going to degenerate into a tit-for-tat kind of a thing, and he's going to take it a run at one of the big players. And honestly, it's not going to be Ovechkin. It's going to be Backstrom, in my opinion. Is that who he's going to target? It's going to be Backstrom or Kuznetsov. Guys he's going to target.
Exactly. And on defense, they'll go after guys like, even though he hasn't been great in the playoffs, they'll go after guys like Shattenkirk because Shattenkirk is an offensive weapon and he's not if you try to go after Brooks Orpik, he's going to stick the stick in your face.
And the officials are going to have to call everything the first couple of minutes of the game to try to quote unquote keep some order, and it's going to degenerate into a power play and special teams type of battle. But there is going to be something that ends up happening. If it's a 1-goal game, maybe not. But if either team gets a big lead, something's going to happen that's going to be really dangerous.
And then this is the thing. I mean, I was waiting for this, and not with glee, but I was waiting for this. It was 2-0, and there was a dump that ended up in an icing, but it missed the goal by about 1.5 feet. If that had gone in and it was 3-0, I was prepared for World War III because I think that would have happened. I think it would have gotten really ugly. There would have been some evening up the score. And, the only thing that will keep that stuff from happening is close games going forward from Game 4. But if one of these teams gets up 3 or 4 goals, there's going to be blood on the ice, and I think that's ugly. Now, one thing where it was funny, I saw something about Daniel Sprong, and I don't know if he was with it's still in the queue, or I don't think he was with Wilkes-Barre, but his season is over with, and he's being brought to the Penguins. I don't think they're going to insert him right now because it's a rookie kid, even though he's played some time in the NHL. But they might think about that because if Sheary's out, this is a guy who can score and who can play.
Yeah, he's got a good hockey IQ. I think he never pouted when he got sent down from the team. He still excelled. And so I think there's a really good chance Sprong will see time in this series. And I think they're going to have to. Again, this is what happens in sports. But, this is the only thing, in my estimation, that would have given the Capitals a chance in this series. If Crosby had played that full game, and we don't know the answer, but I think if Crosby played that full game, I don't even know if the Capitals would have won that game. That's how it is. But now this series feels like it could be evening up just because of injuries.
Everything went the Capitals' way in that game. Holtby was playing good up until a certain point. Crosby was out. Sheary was out. Everything was going their way, and they still blew the lead in the third period. Yeah. I mean, I hesitate in public conversation to use the word choke, but that was a choke yesterday, and only Shattenkirk's power play goal sort of alleviated. I mean, imagine if they had lost that game after everything had happened and they had fallen down 3-0. I don't know how the Capitals players could have looked at themselves in the mirror.
Well, as I tweeted last night, if the Capitals had lost, which would have been the bigger choke? The Rangers blowing a 2-goal lead in 3:19 and losing, or the Capitals blowing the lead with 1.5 minutes to go and losing?
Honestly, Jan, that if the Caps would have lost last night, the 2013 Maple Leafs would be off the hook.
Yep.
Because
I don't know if I'd go that far, but maybe. But the only good, I guess the one good or quote-unquote saving grace is there is a slight extra day between Game 4 and 5. Now, granted, it kind of depends on whether or not how bad of a concussion Crosby got and how willing they are to bring him back sooner rather than later. But that extra day does give the possibility that he could be potentially ready for a Game 5 because he has the extra day of rest.
I will say this is going to test Mike Sullivan because right now he's sort of gotten the Phil Jackson pass. Like, he's got the players. He didn't screw anything up. He won a Stanley Cup. Well, now he doesn't have the players. I mean, now he's legitimately coaching like any other team and he's going to have to fill in some other guys. So this will be a big test for Mike Sullivan, I think.
It sucks in your first line center. You got to go down to like
your first line center, your number one defenseman, and your number one goaltender. And by the way, your number two goaltender is playing like a number one goaltender. He was insane.
But I mean, to have to play Malkin all those minutes, I mean, that's just terrible.
No, but I'm just saying that now they're more like a mortal regular team than the Pittsburgh Penguins.
But I still think I still think they're going to win this series. Okay, but
I'm still picking them.
Yeah, but I think where this does play into it is in the next series and the series beyond.
Absolutely, because right now Ottawa and the Rangers, depending if the Rangers can make a comeback or go, and if we do get Pittsburgh, who knows how good Pittsburgh is going to be when we face them, and if you get Washington, who knows what's going to be with their psyche right now in terms of them going into the next round.
But we knew, okay, and we didn't know that Crosby was going to go down, but we knew coming into this series that Pittsburgh and Washington were going to beat the crap out of each other. It was going to go 6 or 7 games. There was going to be wounded on the battlefield, and whoever came out of that Ottawa Rangers series, even though they'd be the underdog, they'd probably come out less unscathed or relatively unscathed, and they'd have an opportunity. If Pittsburgh advances without Crosby and he's out for the remainder of the playoffs, whoever wins that series in the other division, I think has a good chance now.
Yeah, but the playoffs is always a battle of attrition. It always has been and always will be. But if it's going to be a battle of attrition, at least make it a battle of attrition from legal within the game hits, as opposed to things that go uncalled that create opportunities for other teams.
Now, I do have a little Ranger news. I saw that for their morning skate, the extras.
Don't say it.
No, listen, here's what I'm going to say.
Go ahead.
There were 2 things. The extras were skating, and, of course, Pavel Buchnevich was not among the extras because, he only played 5 minutes last game along with Oscar Lindberg. But Lindberg wasn't with that group. But here's the 2 things I don't like that Alain Vigneault is doing. Right now, the Rangers' power play is awful.
Right.
Awful to the point where, if nothing else, those guys should be skating and working on the power play, and they're not doing it. He's continuing with this no game day skate. And again, I will not say whether the lineup is set or not, because Vigneault will put out 100 guys in pregame skate, and we'll see who plays. But I got to tell you something. If Nick Holden plays tonight, this game, all bets are off. I can't even tell you what.
Well, Russ, I sent you the tweet earlier about your favorite player, Tanner Glass.
No,
he wasn't part of the extras.
A couple of things. So actually, Russ, Buchnevich, Peary, Pumple, and Glass were all with the extras. Glass is the only one who went off the ice early at 11 o'clock, quote unquote, for the team meeting, which is what sparked all the speculation that he's going to be in the lineup tonight. He's not going to sit Holden. He's already made it pretty clear that Holden and Stahl aren't going to sit. And if you read my blog yesterday, and I've been saying it the whole time, he did it in Game 2, where he got caught with them on the ice, where Plekanec scored. He did it in Game 6, when it almost cost him until Lundqvist made the pad save to save them. How you do not play Brady Shea the last 6.5 minutes in Game 2 of the regulation, and you don't play Brandon Smith the last 5.5 minutes, and you keep relying on the same 4 guys. Don't use your timeout after the icing with about 120-something to go in the game, and you're not playing Shea and Smith all those minutes, and your comments post-game are the most asinine thing I've ever heard in my life in terms of the reasons associated with it, that guys deserve minutes. You have a guy who scored 2 goals who's been your best possession guy. Same with Buchnevich. Same with Lindberg, who never should have sat. And meanwhile, you've shortened the bench. You want to sit JT Miller? I get it. He deserved to be sat. He hadn't done anything. But Lindberg, not to have Lindberg on the ice late to try to protect that lead with fast was the stupidest thing I've ever seen in the world, and he's done it several games now. But as I wrote yesterday after Game 2, that is what he did in Game 2, in my opinion. If they don't win this series, could be a fireable offense, according to Gordon.
They're not going to fire him. I agree with you. It could be one, but I don't think they
I know he's got the extension. But you know what? You can't keep making the same mistake over again and not pay some type of price for it.
Tim Murray had an extension in Buffalo. Where is he right now?
Vigneault I've always thought Vigneault has a sort of ceiling to him. And he's a very good coach. He can get you into the playoffs. He can even get you into a few rounds. But he's not. He is definitely afraid of adjustments. He's afraid of making adjustments. He's afraid of. He'd rather just stick with his first instinct and go with it than make an adjustment and lose. And he's always admitted that a couple times in press conferences. I've heard him say it almost to that degree. I mean, the moment that always sticks out to me, and I brought it before, but it was the most crazy moment I've ever covered. Was I actually asked him a question during the Stanley Cup Finals with Vancouver and Boston when Lundqvist couldn't stop a beach ball, right? And I said, not Lund, I'm sorry,
Luongo.
Luongo couldn't stop a beach ball. Right? So I said, Luongo came over at one point, and they were down by 4 goals, and Luongo and Vigneault had words, and I asked Vigneault, I'm like, what did you say to him during that period of time? He said, well, I didn't say anything to him. He just yelled at me, don't you dare take me bleeping out of the game. Don't you take me out of the game. So he's like, so Vigneault left him in the game. And I felt like that was the most crazy thing I'd ever heard because I talked to other coaches. I talked to Ken Hitchcock. I talked to all kinds of people after that. And I said, what would you do if a goalie came over and said that to you, right? And Hitch is like, keep me on the bench faster than you could count. You know, like your goalie can give a bunch of goals, can't come over and say, don't you take me out of the game.
Right.
Well, Vigneault doesn't have like this strong, this strong personality to be able to make certain kinds of moves, like hard moves at hard times. That's what I've seen before. So it feels like he's following that trend.
Well, the one thing is that if he does insert Tanner Glass, that's a comfortable move for Vigneault because there is a level of trust there for some reason.
No, that's fine.
And Glass, the only thing Glass provides is that energy, some physicality, throwing some checks. But honestly, the Montreal series switched when they inserted Buchnevich in the lineup. But the thing is, if Vigneault doesn't trust the young guys, if he doesn't trust the third pairing and the fourth line, and to the point that he doesn't use them, then he better put in somebody who he does trust because you need to roll 4 lines and you need to roll 3 defensive pairings.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It sounds nice, but Vigneault, he's always going to rely on this defense, whether it's good or not. He's always going to, we'll see if they do make a positive change for the power play because I've been asking for Peary forever now. We'll see if that ever happens. It's crazy because you want to talk about the definition of insanity. It is the Rangers right now. It really is. And I wish I could say they were better at guard and ice, so I would say, don't worry, Lundqvist will get this one. They'll close it out. And they'll be right back in the series. But a lot of these personnel moves play into what's going to happen, and we have no idea what the personnel moves are really going to be. I mean, that's the thing. He's always in a veil of secrecy with that too. No,
so being better on home ice requires you to make some hard decisions, actually.
Yes.
Like, it actually does mean that because when you're on the road, you have an excuse. You throw your lines out there. What can you do? You can't match lines. When you're at home, you can match lines.
Yes.
Then the pressure's back on you, right? And Vigneault is not a guy who likes that. I don't get the sense that's what he likes to do. He's got incredible strength. He's a better coach than I'll ever be. So I'm not mean to sit there. But I've noticed this aspect of his personality that he doesn't. He would rather probably be on the road. He'd rather probably them have the last line change because he has his things, and I think he just second guesses himself so much in his head that he's just, I'm not going to do anything different. And there are people you'll meet in life. And I met people. We've all met people throughout our lives, like. I had a boss one time who was like the worst boss in the world. I worked at a bookstore. He was horrible, and he never did anything. It was horrible because he never fixed anything. And yet everyone said, oh, the store runs great. And things would fix themselves because he didn't do anything at all. But people were like, oh, he's the greatest. But the kind of person who's like, that's one method of leadership, to not really do anything, to just sit there and let things work itself out and hope that you have good people below. And sometimes it works out beautifully for people. Because because if you don't do anything, you can't make a mistake, right? So the thing he's afraid of getting blamed for it. So
here's the thing: there's 2 things that really are bugging me. Does Kevin Hayes deserve to be in the lineup? He has 1 point in the playoffs. He's been in hyperspace most of the time, making dumb plays. He's literally there because he's big and fast, right? I mean, that's the impression I get, and that part just sort of bugs me. It's like, why is that a prerequisite? When you have other guys, why even have other guys on the bench?
Yeah, I mean, it's what Ottawa's doing is remarkable. Okay, let's not take anything away from them for a second. I mean, what they're doing.
Absolutely.
I mean, that last game, the comeback was freaking phenomenal, and the way the Rangers did a bunch of things that allowed it to happen, but still they did it.
I think that's the bigger point here. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Ottawa. I mean, they taken advantage of the opportunity.
Like though, I mean, they're in the position to do it. I mean, I agree with you that the Rangers helped them along, but that in the overtime, the Rangers could have won it in the first 1.5 overtimes just as easily as Ottawa could have won it in the first.
But
who's should have gone to overtime? That's the point.
Yeah. You know who's beating up the Rangers? Victor Stahlberg. And I'm sure that hurts Ranger fans because he is bruising up guys, checking them into the boards, where he wasn't even doing that as a Ranger. Like all of a sudden,
there's fan bases from about 15 cities that feel that way. Like the thing, Staubber's playing like this right now. You know, I mean, this guy's playing for Nashville. He's played for almost every team that's left in the playoffs, pretty much.
That's true.
Game 1, Ottawa played them, and Lundqvist was the only reason why. And granted, it was a fluky goal. Game 2, they blew that game. They basically had the win and handed it back to Ottawa due for poor usage and misusage of personnel. Either A, sitting guys that shouldn't have been sat, or B, playing guys in certain situations that shouldn't have been in those situations. And Russ, I agree with you. Hayes is having the same kind of playoffs as he did last year. Somebody should show him his Players Tribune article and see what he wrote there. Maybe that'll wake him up a little bit.
Oh, man. But this was JT Miller and the New York Rangers. Remember that whole thing? I think you guys talked about JT Miller.
Yeah.
Never forget turning on Comcast and watch the Flyers play JT Miller and the New York Rangers. I'm like, huh.
Yeah.
But no,
JT Miller's not having – JT Miller's got 1 playoff goal, I believe, in 31 games now, so may not be the guy to highlight in your columns.
I also think, you know, the subtle changes, and I saw this, you know, when Vigneault started using Ryan McDonagh as the point man on the #1 power play. I get, you know, McDonough's experienced and he's a very good two-way defenseman. I think his usage is better as a shutdown and as a 5-on-5 guy. You have Brady Shea, who was their point man on the power play for most of the year, correct? And he's been scoring. I think he has 4 goals in the playoffs. Why aren't you using Brady Shea as the point man on the power play?
Shea actually is a second-line guy, and he wasn't on the power play all the time, which is one of the criticisms we had. And then they moved him, but then they rotated Stepan back to the point and sometimes Zuccarello before moving him down to the half boards. The bigger issue they have is more the zone entry, which is the bigger problem. They're unable to gain the offensive zone to set up. You saw it when they did it against Montreal in Game 6, the goal by Zuccarello, and the passing play. That's because they were able to gain the zone. And if they would please stop with the drop back to get the guy with the
you know, that's newer though. The
never
Flyers
works.
The Flyers do that.
Oh, every team does it. Every team does it.
And it doesn't work.
But the Rangers had stayed away from it for a while, and they were doing it on the power play, and it drove me crazy. Did you
happen to notice after the own goal that happened? I can't remember who did it during the season, but on a delayed penalty, they did the drop back, and it went back in their own net. Did you notice from now on, all the drop backs are to the side and not up the middle because they're afraid of doing that very thing?
There was a moment in the Predators Blues game, okay, where the Predators were on the power play. They came into the zone 3 times. All 3 times they did this, and 2 of the times there was a Blues player standing on the red line waiting for them to do it.
Yeah.
And they passed it right to the Blues player who threw it back into the zone. They came back out. They passed it right back to the Blues player. They're trying to get the guy who's coming. It's this like slingshot play that they all like, but it's only effective if you don't do it all the time. I mean,
it's almost like in the locker room they put percentages on.
Oh, yeah.
Pass and what the area is. Well, this is a 40%, and this is a 60%, and this is a 75% that it's not going to go well, and you can't do this. And it's like, and players just like robots stay away from it. It takes away all creativity on the power play. It does.
And what it requires is what happens is you have one player. So, you know, basically when you're on a power play, what you would normally do, and you never see people dump the puck in on the power plays anymore, but you know that used to be that could be effective at times. It used to be if you were quick enough.
If you've got the guys that could play along the wall, yeah.
And if you get everybody moving as you put the puck in the zone, you know. But what happens with this play is you end up with 4 of your players lined up on the blue line, or 3 of your players lined up on the blue line, stationary, waiting. And then you have this other guy coming full speed in because he's when you threw the puck back to, he's coming full speed in, and you're sitting there stationary. And the defense is sitting there stationary. So you have like 12 guys on the blue line waiting for this guy coming full speed in. If he doesn't dump the puck in, he's either got to make an incredible play. It's so easy to defend against because it's like all you have to do is know he's got to make a pass. So he's gonna come in, and those players who are standing stationary are easily picked up. So there's
a reason the Rangers are like 2 for 21 on the power play. There's a reason.
It makes me insane. I mean, two other things about the series that really strike me. First of all, they've scored 9 goals on Lundqvist in 2 games, right? So this is that is something that is you would never have thought in a million years.
But this is the worst defense ever put in front of them too. We have to acknowledge that.
The Senators team is not, you know, the Pittsburgh Penguins. They don't have this is the probably, you know, not the worst, maybe the worst offense left in the NHL right now. Maybe perhaps it's hard to say because they put all these goals in, but I wouldn't put them up there really high, you know, with everybody else. But that fact that they've done that is something, that's a huge thing because Lundqvist feeds on, the fact that he is unbeatable. And the more Lundqvist is unbeatable, the harder he gets to beat him. It goes on and on and on, right? So right now, in Ottawa's head, he's very beatable, regardless of how good the defense is playing in front of him.
And that's why the first goal tonight is huge because if Ottawa gets that first goal and gets into that 1-3-1 trap, you're going to have a dead Madison Square Garden like you did in Game 3 against Montreal. Rangers got to get the crowd into it tonight and also try to put some of the bad taste from the way it ended in Game 2 out of their minds, getting the lead. But, of course, what's going to happen is, I can tell you right now, the crowd will be on complete edge if the Rangers have a 1 or 2 goal lead late, expecting something bad to happen, as opposed to in years past when they expected them to close out a win.
Yeah.
Can the Rangers borrow Matt Niskanen so he can play against Erik Karlsson?
I mean, really, can the Rangers win a big face-off? I mean, that's going to be a big thing too.
Yep.
Yeah. The other kind of surprise, getting away from the series for a second. Yep. Big surprise to me that yesterday we saw the announcement of the the most valuable player award finalists. Okay, so you get McDavid, you get Crosby, we get that. That makes sense. And then Bobrovsky, it sort of comes out of left field to me. Bobrovsky's had a great year. There's no two ways about it. But at the same time, I thought Brent Burns was going to be definitely the third guy in this whole thing.
The last 6 weeks of Brent Burns' regular season absolutely killed him. He disappeared. Yeah. And San Jose went from, they were riding pretty high, I would say, late February, early March. They just fell down the last 5 or 6 weeks and I don't think ever recovered. They didn't really impress in the playoffs. So I think that was the reason why. But
I think it's just an acknowledgement. Bob is not winning this award.
He's not winning this award. No way. I mean, this is a 2-horse race for sure. Yeah. But but I think there's other players. Like looking around the league, there's other players I would have thought of before him. I mean, it's easy. You obviously can't take the playoffs into account. But looking at what Erik Karlsson is doing right now, he's obviously as valuable as any player in the league to the Ottawa Senators. I mean, there's no question that what he does for that team is as valuable as what any player does for any team.
I think Burns' slump and the team slump in March is probably what cost him a shot. I agree with you. He probably would have been a guy up for contention, but he hit the skids for about 14 games or so, as did the team. And the fact that he did that and wasn't able to help lift the team up, that probably played a bigger part as why he wasn't one of the final 3.
And the other goaltender who might have had a case against, as opposed to Bobrovsky, was Dubnyk, and Dubnyk had the same thing. March the 1st, Minnesota went in the tank for 6 weeks.
You know what's interesting? Yeah. I get this from the player response. I didn't do a survey. I didn't do one of these, great surveys where everybody's anonymous and they tell you the truth. But it just seems like fans and the media love the Hart Trophy, but the players really care about winning the Pearson. That's just, even though, and I know it says the Players Trophy, right? So, but it doesn't have to be that way. But for whatever reason, it really does seem like it is. That's all.
Yeah. No, they do. I mean, I was looking for other possible guys that I would consider MVP candidates. I mean, Patrick Kane had a really good year. People don't even really think about it. For some reason, he was completely not really thinking about this award.
I think the fact that he won it recently.
Yeah, that's true.
Chances.
I mean, Karlsson
had an incredible year. Nikita Kucherov, right? Nikita Kucherov had an amazing year.
But they didn't make the playoffs.
But Erik Karlsson, what about Erik Karlsson? He finished the season really strong.
I think Karlsson would have been a good choice. I think that if you're talking goaltenders, there was talk about Holtby for a while. There was talk about Price for a while. I think the injury to Price, or the slump in the middle of the year for Price, hurt him. There was even talk, and I know I'm going to be accused of being a homer. There was even talk of Austin Matthews.
No, and I don't think that's being a homer at all. Honestly, I think that he, if you look around the league as to just going by, it never does go by this, but just if you were to go by the actual definition of most valuable to a team, Austin Matthews is unquestionably as valuable to Toronto as Brent Burns was to San Jose, as Bobrovsky was. I mean, Bobrovsky is, he's definitely somebody the media love. Bobrovsky. He's a hard worker. He's a good guy. I don't have any problem with it. And it is nice some acknowledgement, but the Blue Jackets, between the coach of the year and this Super Award, they got a lot of more acknowledgement than they usually get from the media. For a team that's really
just didn't get far in the playoffs. I think they would trade it for that.
Well, they ran up against Pittsburgh. I mean, they really had the worst possible placement they could have had, because they could have gone to easily the conference finals if they don't hit Pittsburgh. So I mean,
sometimes you got to slay the dragon, even if it's just 1 year where everything works right. Sometimes you just have to slay the dragon in sports,
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, who had the most points per game this season in the NHL? Do you know this answer?
Points per game.
Points per game, all right? Top three. Well, number 1, Connor McDavid. Number 2, Sidney Crosby. All right, but that's easy. After that, points per game. This guy played 62 games and finished 14th in scoring with 72 points.
Johnny Gaudreau.
Nope. This would be Evgeny Malkin.
Okay, he was my next thought.
Really had a hell of a year.
He always has a hell of a year, but he doesn't get credit.
I don't dump Pittsburgh out of it at all. I think it's impossible to sit there and say, because Malkin, another thing we've learned about him over the years, right? It's how much better he gets when Crosby's not in the lineup. Has always been the case.
No, nobody was saying they're out of it, but I think now if the series went to 7, you wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, although just the way Washington almost blew it last night makes me think it's not going to go that far. I have a feeling that the next game, the Penguins will ride on the emotion of the Sidney Crosby thing. I think they will ride that emotion through one game, and they'll be up 3-1. And at that point, anything's possible, right? So at that point, it's really going to be hard for the Caps to come back and win it.
I'm not saying that the Penguins cannot win this series, but I honestly think that without Crosby and without Sheary, this series is up for grabs. And I would not say that it's not possible that Washington wins the next 3 and wins it in 6 because Crosby is that important of a player. I think, it's very possible, you're right, that Pittsburgh wins game 4, maybe loses game 5 and finishes it off in game 6. But I also think it's very possible that the Caps will continue to do what they did in game 3, which is go after the Penguins. Now you've got less quality players. Now you zero in on Malkin. Now you zero in on. Marc-Andre Fleury took a big hit from, and I can't remember what forward it was. I think it may have been Johansson. I think Johansson was driven into Fleury by the defenseman. But the backup is Tristan Jarry. Matt Murray is not available. You want to rock that series? If you take out Marc-Andre Fleury and Tristan Jarry as your number 1 goaltender.
You know what? I'm going to tell you something, though. There will be a drop-off, but I don't know if it's as great as you think it will be.
I know, but it's an untested kid. I will grant you Jerry's got a lot of potential.
And he has played in some big games, so I think you would actually see the team go into that mode where Eck always talks about, and we've talked about, where sometimes you play better with the backup goalie. For a short time, they would do everything they could to defend that backup goalie,
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case.
But game 4 is going to be appointment television. It's going to be
a war. It's going to be a flat-out war, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some comments coming out from the NHL or somebody beforehand to try to minimize what's going to happen in that game.
I still feel like these are the 2 best teams in the league. I still feel that. I still feel that right now.
I don't see there's a reason to not feel that way.
I really watch when you watch the Ottawa Rangers series. I don't see either of those teams competing with either the Penguins or the Capitals right now.
But they still could win a series against them depending on injury. They could. Depending,
but Crosby's not enough in my opinion for that. I think that it's possible. I think the
West. But it's Crosby and Letang. it's a lot. Yeah, Sheary matters too. He does.
Anaheim is the best shot of taking out the Penguins of any team left.
I don't know if they beat. I don't know if they beat Edmonton.
I don't know if they beat Edmonton either. So, but I agree. But I think they're
all about matchups. It always is.
Yeah, I think they've got the best shot. And whether they get past them or not. It certainly is looking like, right now the Penguins and the Predators are the 2 best teams in the league as far as from either conference, just the way both teams are playing. But, it's hard to see how this will all play out from there.
Yeah.
Shaking your head, Mike, what do you think?
It's too early. You got 8 teams still left, so it's too early to really, St. Louis could come back and win that series.
They definitely could.
Know. So,
they were dominated pretty well in game 3. That was a closer game than it looked, just like the scoring.
I can see a path where it's Penguins, Predators. I can see Caps, Predators, which would be, the Barry Trotz going against his old team. I think everybody wants that script. But
hey, Philippe Forsberg, Martin Erat. Come on, that's really the big story for that one.
The Martin Erat Forsberg trade.
Yeah, but where's Martin Erat? Is he in the Czech league right now?
That's a darn good question.
So should we just mention the contract announcements?
There's a couple Leaf contract signings. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, okay. The one is a minor contract, but not insignificant in the sense. Ben Smith, who's a journeyman fourth line guy, signed a 1-year deal. But the reason that they did that, and I've been saying this for about 3 months, is that they're going to sign Ben Smith to qualify for the expansion exposure. You had to have a player who played 70 games over the last 2 years or 40 games this year on your roster to be able to qualify. And Smith, he was a UFA, but now that they've signed him to an extension, they can expose him, and they'll expose Eric Fair as their two guys, and they don't have to expose Matt Martin or Leo Komarov, who I think are integral parts of the team, but different type of players. The other contract was Nikita Zaitsev. 7 years. This is the deal that was reported last month. 7 years, $4.5 million. I think this is a really good contract. It's a little long. He's 25 years old, but
he's still not proven enough for me to get in 7 years. I'm sorry.
I know, Russ, but the thing is, I think that what they see, okay, Babcock has confidence in him. They've scouted him for 2 years before he came over to the Leafs. They think he's a quality player. He's played a year in the NHL. And the thing is, the money that they're getting him at, $4.5 million for a guy who scored in the mid 30s, 5 or 6 goals, 30 assists, is a pretty team friendly deal. They're not spending $5.5 million. They're spending $4.5 million. So I think it's a pretty good signing. 7 years is a little lengthy, but it only gets him to age 32. So that's not.
I'm not worried about the age. I mean, it's just we don't know if the league will change again. If the league changes again and it becomes more of a rough and tumble, big and fast league, then Zaitsev may be on the outside looking in 3 years. That's what I worry about.
Agreed. I mean, but I think a lot of teams are in trouble if that happens. So, I mean, I'm just saying they're dealing with the league in the here and now, and for most of the year, he was on their top pairing. I don't think down the road he's a top pairing defenseman. I think the main focus of the Maple Leafs this year is to get a top pairing defenseman in a trade or in free agency. And though I think that's going to be the single focus of Lou Lamoriello is to either 1A is probably trade James Van Riemsdyk and 1B is to get that top pairing defenseman. Zaitsev is a second pairing guy, and $4.5 million is reasonable for a second pairing guy.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. All right, well, that'll be good stuff. We don't have any draft lottery simulators. I wasn't here yesterday to discuss.
No, I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to be covering, or I may be covering, depending on the condition of my car, the New Jersey Hall of Fame inductions on Saturday, and one of the interesting ones is Chuck Wepner, right? He was a boxer, Bayonne bleeder. We all know Chuck Wepner. But I looked from 2008 to current, and there are no hockey players. Now, I don't know if there's any hockey players in there, but there's 2 really good New Jersey hockey players, and I'm wondering if they're waiting for them to retire. Like, for me, you might as well just put Bobby Ryan in now because, it won't matter. There's nobody else coming. There's nobody else,
right?
Probably 5 years from now that will do what he's done, and Van Riemsdyk is second. But you got to put Bobby Ryan in, I think. I mean, I don't see how you wouldn't.
Yeah, no, I think that would be, did they put Morgan in, the women's soccer player yet?
No. What's her name? I don't know. I couldn't look at previous. Carney Lloyd is going in this year.
Lloyd. Sorry, not Morgan. Lloyd. So Lloyd's going in this year. Great.
She is going this year, yeah.
I remember when she was playing in Medford.
So, and Kelly Ripp is going in. I don't know how I feel about that, but okay.
Kelly Ripp.
When I was a kid,
Michael Strahan introducing her.
You beat me to the punch, Jan.
Listen, Ryan Seacrest is her new co-host. That's
that says it all.
This is important to know. Okay, if you know nothing else about me, know these 2 things. I used to see Kelly Ripa and Callista Flockhart all the time at the mall. They were both South Jersey. They would be at the Cherry Hill Mall, and that's where I would, when I was a kid.
And they saw you and went the other way, didn't they?
Yeah, no, they were. I mean, just like they were part of that group. That So
yeah, they were a clique.
That was pre-Harrison Ford days for Callista Flockhart, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Callista Flockhart, would not be anybody that you would be like, wow, you would never have thought in a million years she was going to turn into anything like a star. You know what I mean? She's kind of like a drowned. She's like maybe 80 pounds as a drowned rat. Like she's really. I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, I like Ally McBeal a lot. It's a great show, but
go.
Callista Flockhart is not. Kelly Ripa. She had the look of that, thing.
Did you say that? Did you say that Ryan Seacrest is the permanent host?
Yeah,
got named yesterday, I think it was.
I just said that, Mike. Were you sleeping through that?
No, I thought I heard it, but I was like,
he's on a Zaitsev high. Leave him alone over here.
I saw Rosie Greer's getting in this year. I was happy to see that. People may have, known him for his football career, but they may not have because, like, by the time, if you're my age, he was well done with football. He had been on some TV shows, but he was known for crocheting or knitting, right, Mike?
Yep. But if you don't know your history, Greer was a heck of a defensive lineman.
He was.
Oh yeah, and just a little up.
And he could knit you an Afghan in no time.
and Merlin Olsen would send you a Hallmark card.
Right.
Just one little update.
I used to hook rug with Merlin Olsen. Go ahead, continue.
A little bit of conflicting info when it comes to the Buffalo Sabres GM situation.
Oh yeah. Let's get into that for a second.
Yeah. There were reports. WGR Radio in Buffalo was reporting yesterday that they expected the GM to be named within 24 to 48 hours.
Now, I have the background of this, but go ahead, you might keep going.
And then John Shannon from Sportsnet reported that the Sabres are nowhere close to naming a general manager, and that
there's players they're still going to interview. There's still people that are going to interview with this thing. And I heard Verbeek is still coming in to be interviewed. He hasn't come in yet. I think that they are. Botterill was the name that was flying out, and it started from a radio station, a DJ on a radio station called Kiss something up in Buffalo.
Kiss 98.5 probably.
Yes, Kiss 9. That was where the Botterill rumor began. I did a little research yesterday to see, just do a little Twitter investigation to see where it all started from.
When you're getting rumors from Nicholas Pickles on not Kiss 98.5,
yes.
Jesus.
Not to mention the fact that Botterill's team is still playing, and the unlikelihood of them actually announcing a GM from a team that's still playing would be. It's not impossible to happen, but it would be surprising that they would.
Not to totally destroy the Buffalo market, but when I used to drive through there used to be this guy who would talk football called like the coach or something.
Yeah, Chuck Dickerson. He was a former Bills defensive
lineman. This guy was the biggest embarrassment I ever heard on the air. A Nicholas Pickles doesn't shock me. It just
I'll just say this. One of the names that was reported was Tom Fitzgerald, the former Penguins assistant GM, now assistant GM with the New Jersey Devils. There were reports that he had interviewed. And I don't know if it was on Friday or the day before or the day after. He was in Toronto with the Albany Devils.
Okay.
He's the GM of the Albany Devils. So he could have been interviewed before or could have been interviewed after. But
he was one of the first to come in, I heard. And Tom's a great guy. He was on the first.
Here's the funny thing. They do. Not only does this search have zero transparency, but if you do say a name to Terry Pegula, most of the time he'll shoot it down and say it's not true. But it could be true. That's the funny thing.
Well, here's an indication, and this is just off the Sabre page for one brief second. When they fired their general manager, Doug Whaley, the Bills general manager, in the press conference, Terry Pegula says, "No, we have not put on any inquiry about this Carolina assistant GM that had worked with the Bills coach." The next day, that guy. They asked permission. So, I mean, there's not a lot of forthcoming things coming from Terry Pegula and the Pegula organization, and that's fine. If they want to like keep things in house and do it that way, fine. But don't, we know that you're going after this guy, so don't lie to us. That's all we're saying.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, the day after the NHL draft, do you feel safe being a Buffalo Sabres scout? I don't know.
Depends. I mean, the guys, when you think of the guys like, that they're looking at, I think Botterill probably is the favorite. I think that is probably the case. I've heard Botterill and Zito, and I've heard Fitzgerald's name mentioned as well as it's like three of the top guys. But I think that, and then they're all assistant GMs. And they're all really respectful. They probably would keep the scouts. They probably. I don't think that they would.
Oh, but here's the thing: we say that, but he cleared out all the scouts from the Bills, so we don't know that that's going to be true anymore.
I will say this: I've talked to a couple of people who've been involved in this now, and the feeling, is that the Bills are an issue with that. Not an issue, but the fact that they're trying to do both of these things at the same time is not helping them. Like that, This is that they have two giant things happening at once.
Right.
Really is really going to make. That's why this process is going to take a while because they really are.
These are important decisions. These are big deals.
Decisions, and they're both happening simultaneously. So that's.
We've never seen anything like this actually in any sport ever. Like with two sports like this, we've had one owner do multiple teams, but we've never seen them have these multiple searches at the same time. It's crazy.
Right, at the exact same, and and it's hard to say. Like the president, who's right now president of both, will he be president of both when this all is said and done? Everything seems like it's up in the air. It seems like it's completely. And although I have talked to people who've talked to them, and they say they've been incredibly respectful, and that they.
Oh no! Look, I fully expect everybody on the Sabres staff. They're all going to go through the draft safely.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Again, just like the Bills got cleaned out, I can't say for sure now that the Sabres won't, because I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that all the administrative contracts end on June 30th, just like the player contract. So the general manager will have the final say when it comes to keeping scouts and getting rid of scouts. But the thing that I think that is overriding in Buffalo right now about the situation is the fact that you have a team. You do not have a team president who has any hockey knowledge. He's a business guy. He's been a general manager of the Bills and involved with the Bills for a number of years, and he just took over the Sabres job in the last year. So he is, along with the Pagulas, is handling the search for the general manager. And what I think needs to happen is you have to have a team president who is the buffer between Pagula and the general manager, because otherwise a young general manager will have an owner who really doesn't know anything about the sport other than being a fan, and that's his right. He owns the team, but they will meddle in operations of the team, and that is nothing but a disaster.
Yeah. No, it's well said, I think.
Yeah, they need someone like a George Costanza who could really bridge the gap.
Oh man, well, Trevely got re-upped, which was good to see yesterday for Calgary. There was a lot of speculation involving that too. Craig Conroy actually is another name that still could be interviewed, I heard, for Buffalo. So there's a lot.
Okay, so I've talked to Craig Conroy 2 or 3 times in the last few years. He's been on our show. Very bright guy. Players clearly respect him and like him. He's a very positive guy.
Yeah, he is.
I think he would have a chance. I do, because he would bring a lot of energy to an organization. That's the one thing I can tell you about Conroy. When you talk to him, whether it's off the air, on the air, this guy is passionate about hockey. He was always a passionate player, and he was always that guy that got the most out of his ability, because and he would admit it himself. But I got to tell you, he's a relatable guy. He is.
No, he's very relatable. I mean, it's hard to just do you at the point where you're at right now, hand this over to somebody who doesn't have enough. The Sabres are at such a critical point. It's not the best time, in my opinion, to bring in an ex-player and have them do this. That's what I like about Botterill and Zito. I think they're both more savvy as far as business goes. They really need that. Nothing against Guerin or any of these other people, but I just think that I don't know. It's how they'll do what they're going to do. But I think that
all I can say is, and I said it before, and I'll say it again, for Buffalo, for both of these teams, the decisions that are made in the next week or two could affect them for like the next 3-4 years.
Exactly.
Both of them.
Yep. All right, that's all the time we have for today, folks. We'll be back again tomorrow. Thank you, Jan, for joining us. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Enjoy the games tonight. I'm glad they're staggered. You got East and West. It's going to be fun. Talk to you soon.